We're set to begin the second half of the season, but a number of issues will be hanging over the heads of the Illini as we get through the final 6 games. We talk about them as Inside the Illini Big Ten Football starts now.
Inside the Illini Big Ten College Football is brought to you by Illini HQ, the News Gazette, News Talk 1400 WDWS and WAND.
Welcome to the show. We start on the desk as usual with Steve Kelly from Sports Talk 1400, Matt Daniels from the Champaign News Gazette, two guys that have had a front row seat, so to speak, to this 3-3 start for the University of Illinois. I don't think we wanted to be 3-3 at this point after the loss to Purdue. Steve, what's your assessment of this team?
For some reason, 3-3 doesn't feel like 3-3.
No, it doesn't.
You know,
it sounds okay, and I think Tim Beckman's trying to convince his guys that it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel okay.
You win that game against Purdue, which everybody thought they would. You're 4-2 with a whole different outlook.
Right.
And so 3-3 doesn't feel so good after that, especially the way they lost the game. And give credit to Purdue, I guess. They came in and did what they had to do. They were kind of in the same position, same boat in the Big Ten, but it just doesn't feel like 3-3.
No, and some of the struggles that Illinois had this year, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, are kind of mirror images of what they went through last year. Their inability to tackle opposing running backs consistently, their inability to stop opposing running backs consistently. It's just, it's not looking too well going into today's game in Madison, but hey, if Illinois wins today, everyone forgets about the 3-3 start, but I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah, that'll be a tough. You think it's going to be closer than a lot of people do. We'll talk about that coming up later in the show. We'll see if you changed your mind by then. Of course, the big story coming out, Wes Lunt kind of hobbles off the field, thinks it's a calf injury. Prognosis is a little bit worse than we had thought, out 4 to 6 weeks with the fractured fibula. How big of a loss is that?
That's a huge loss, I think. I mean, he was leading the Big Ten, still is leading the Big Ten in passing categories. He just won't get to add to that. But and that was something that was a little bit scary with him from the start, I think, because he had been a little injury prone, and you were like knocking on wood that he would stay healthy. But as you watch that game, even before they took him out with the aid of a couple of trainers, he was hobbling quite a bit.
No, it changes the dynamic of the Illinois offense quite a bit. You go from I still think they'll be a pass-first offense with Riley O'Toole taking the snaps today, but he doesn't have that downfield threat that Lund has, doesn't have a strong arm as Lund has. So what Bill Cubitt calls today will be very interesting to see.
And we have to have a discussion that's not comfortable for any of us, but the coaching decision. Clearly, this was a game that felt like a must-win for Tim Beckman for his future with Illinois. Do you think Mike Thomas is maybe thinking about the future a little bit, and does it include Tim Beckman?
Well, yes, I think he's thinking about the future, because I think an AD has to do that all the time.
Right.
And whether or not it includes Tim Beckman, I don't know if you can determine that yet. He's only halfway through his 3rd year, and that's something that Mike Thomas has got to be working on, though.
No, he has to. He has to have a list of candidates in mind if this thing keeps going south like it has so far for the Illini. And again, Tim Beckman hasn't shown the ability to win Big Ten games, and that was a big thing Mike Thomas said when he fired Ron Zook after the 2011 season, is that Zook didn't win enough in the Big Ten, and Beckman's got a 1-17 record going into today.
Second worst in the country since 2012, that 1-17 conference record among FBS teams. Well, the coaching discussion wouldn't be happening, at least not today, had things gone differently Saturday. We'll break it down and let the Illini try to explain away some things in their own words as Inside the Illini Big Ten Football continues. The matchup against Purdue had Illinois as a 10-point favorite at home. Though remember last year, Illinois was the team on a long Big Ten losing streak, seeing an opportunity on the road in their most winnable game of the year. The Boilermakers saw that Saturday, and they took advantage. It was labeled as a must-win for Illinois, for bowl hopes, for confidence, and for job security. Darrell Hazel's Purdue Boilermakers were 0-9 in Big Ten play as they jogged into Memorial Stadium. And on Illinois' opening drive, the home team looked superior, starting with a couple of big 3rd and long conversions. This one for 30 yards to Mikey Dudek, the beginning of a monster day for the freshman.
We connected a few times, but that just goes with how we practiced during the week. I felt like we had a good week of practice, Wes and I both, so it came out and we started strong.
The drive went 10 plays for 88 yards, ending in a touchdown pass to Tyler White, the tight end's first career catch. But that lead disappeared quickly thanks to, you guessed it, a breakdown in run defense. Look at the hole Raheem Mostert had to run through. He went 44 yards untouched for the score to tie the game at 7. Early, though, the Illinois offense was playing loose, and coordinator Bill Cubitt opened up the playbook. On the Purdue 14, it's a Statue of Liberty, and it's successful. Run down to the 2 by Josh Ferguson. He'd get to finish the drive with a touchdown, and Illinois held a 14-7 lead after a quarter. In the second, more trouble stopping the run. Akeem Hunt, who passed the 100-yard mark against Illinois last season, did it again. 54 of his 177 yards coming on this touchdown run. The Boilermakers added a field goal to take a 17-14 halftime lead.
Tackling was one of the big things. We had a couple short yardage opportunities. We loaded the box to stop them.
One of the surprises coming from the Purdue side, the Illini spent much of the week preparing for QB Danny Etling. But it was Austin Appleby, the sophomore, that took all the snaps. Appleby was 15 of 20 passing for 202 yards. He also ran for 76, and that threat opened things up in the second half. Following an Illinois fumble, Purdue padded their lead. Appleby finding Danny Anthrop, and a missed tackle later, Anthrop was off to the races. 80 yards for the touchdown, putting Purdue up by 10. After coming up empty on 5 straight drives, the Illini got back on the board. Wes Lunt to Geronimo Allison in the front of the end zone, and it was a 3-point game again. But then it was Appleby with his legs. A huge lane, and he just ran straight, going 62 yards. He'd finished the drive with a short rushing score, and it put Purdue back in front by 10. But in the fourth, trailing by 11, suddenly the score became secondary. When Illinois quarterback Wes Lunt was dropped for a sack, he tried to get off the field, but he needed help. Originally thought to be a flare-up of a calf injury he suffered against Washington, it was later diagnosed as a fractured fibula. Riley O'Toole came in relief and led 3 drives, one finishing in a blocked field goal. This was Tim Beckman's reaction. Another resulting in a turnover on downs, and the last one, an interception in the end zone, as Illinois went down meekly to Purdue, which got its first Big Ten win under Darrell Hazel.
Got to stop the run, and we're not, scoring points in the red zone.
This is kind of a turning point here, and I said earlier, a coward's way out is to point fingers, and I'm not going to let that happen.
It's not fair to those kids, if we just say, you start worrying about other factors.
And nobody's going to feel sorry for us. If anything, they're going to pile on. So we got to get it corrected in a hurry, because we know we'll be facing a great run team in Wisconsin.
I didn't show a shot of Mike Thomas there at the end by accident. He's a guy who certainly doesn't look happy when he's standing there on the sidelines, there to console the team as each one of them runs in. But let's talk about this game. I don't want to make this segment as long as it has to be. He can't stop the run. It's been a problem for a long time. What's going on here?
It's all about tackling, and it sounds pretty simple. You see the guy with the ball, tackle the guy with the ball, but they haven't been able to do it. And today, they're getting maybe the best running back they're going to see all year in Melvin Gordon. Amir Abdullah was pretty good, but I think Gordon might be better.
Yeah, he's a little bit bigger than Abdullah, and I know that kind of poses some concerns for the Illini, and they're just overcompensating a lot of times too with their linebackers. They're trying to over pursue to the ball, and they're not taking the proper angles that they need to, and it just comes down to at times just wrapping up and taking the guy all the way to the ground. And there's a lot of arm tackling going on for Illinois, a lot of side swipes at guys as they're running by him, and it's not boding well for Illinois right now.
Tim Beckman was asked the question after the Nebraska loss, and I think it was a fair question. What does it say about this team that this keeps happening, that 30 games into his tenure now, his teams can't seem to be able to stop the run? And he didn't really answer it. He was upset after the game. But is it more about coaching and scheme, or are we to believe that the talent gap is really that big in the Big Ten between Illinois and everybody else?
I think maybe you hit it right there with the talent gap. I think that's the case. I think Illinois has some decent players. They just don't have enough of them.
Yeah, that's true. And Illinois has taken a beating on the past few signing days with some of the recruits they brought in. And the Illinois coaching staff, that's their job to develop, these players once they get here, if they're not these highly touted recruits at all. And so far, it doesn't seem like they've been able to do that.
Well, there was some good that came out of it. Mikey Dudek, I said it in that package, he was just electric. It seemed like he and Lunt had this thing where Lunt was just like, you know, go get it, kid. Double coverage, didn't matter. Has Dudek, I wasn't here when A.J. Jenkins was here. Has Dudek become the most reliable guy since Jenkins?
I'd say yes.
And, I mean, just in the short time he's been here.
And he kind of crashed onto the scene. I mean, we knew about him. He was here early. We saw him a little bit in the spring, saw him at Camp Rantoul. I was still amazed that he's not broken in half by now because he's not so big. But you get the ball near him, he'll catch it.
Yeah, and I asked him earlier this week, you know, how are you holding up physically just with the Big Ten style of play? And he said he's sore after every game. It's a different pounding than he took up at Neuqua Valley High School in the Chicago suburbs by no means. But
I'd imagine.
I was impressed with the ability to really stretch the field against Purdue. You'd seen him more kind of in the short, intermediate passing game for Illinois, and they went to him on several deep balls, and he came through.
It was fun to watch, and it's a shame that, you know, he and Lunt have this chemistry. We're not going to be able to see that for a couple of weeks. Good news is, in terms of Lunt's injury, they have a couple of bye weeks during that 4 to 6 week prognosis. So hopefully things get back into shape there, and you know, see a little more Lunt and Dudek at least. It was a week of upsets in college football. 3 of the top 5 and 5 of the top 8 went down last week, and 9 through 25 weren't really any safer. That included Illinois' next opponent, the upset special in the Big Ten West. Next. The Inside the Illini Weekly MVP brought to you by Menards, recognizing the top Illinois performer from the previous week. True freshman Mikey Dudek was electric, making big play after big play, 8 catches for an even 200 yards. His big day catapulted him into the team lead for receiving yards, and he's now second in the Big Ten.
I mean, definitely you get more comfortable the more experience you get, so it's getting there.
He's been good. Well, meantime, upsets work one of 2 ways. 1, they build the identity of a conference as strong from top to bottom, or 2, they expose your top contenders as not so strong. An exciting day may have actually done the latter to the Big Ten. Eric Harold updates us on the West.
In the West, number 17 Wisconsin taking on Northwestern. Northwestern looking for an upset, and this would help, as Wisconsin in the red zone, Godwin Iibtf picks it off, takes points off the board. You will see him again in these highlights, but for now, Trevor Siemian hits Dan Vitale from 5 yards out to give Northwestern a 10-0 lead. Wisconsin would answer. Who else? Melvin Gordon. He stops short, but then he gets into the end zone 10-7 at that point, but Northwestern's offense would keep on scoring as Miles Schuler gets the ball on the reverse, takes it around the left side and into the end zone. Northwestern leads, but this would come down to the last possession for Wisconsin as they're trying to come back from a 1-score deficit, but Stabby is picked off by who else? Godwin Iibtf, his 3rd pick of the game. Northwestern pulls off a big 2014 upset. A showdown between ranked opponents as Nebraska out of the West takes on Michigan State out of the East. Michigan State would take a big lead early thanks to plays like this Tony Lippett reverse. They lead 27-3, but Nebraska would start to come back in the 4th quarter thanks to who else? Amir Abdullah. Makes the score a little more manageable, and then they get some big plays out of their special teams as DeMornay Pearsonell waits for the punt, takes it, goes along the sideline, weaves his way through the coverage, goes for a touchdown, pulls Nebraska within 1 score. They would have the ball late with a chance to come back, but the ball was picked. Comeback fails, and Michigan State survives Nebraska 27-22. And now we return to the Inside the Illini crew.
Let's start with the upset of the week, Northwestern over Wisconsin. It's one of those games you go, Wisconsin's got that one, moving on. Did it catch you off guard to see that result there?
Absolutely. I watched some of that game and didn't see that coming at all, but I didn't see Northwestern going to Penn State a couple weeks ago and winning that game either. So I was quite surprised by that, but then when I investigated it a little bit, Wisconsin has trouble playing up there, and they have in the last few years, so maybe it's not that big a surprise.
Yeah, Northwestern is a team that a lot of people were writing off after their 0-2 start at the beginning of the year, and Pat Fitzgerald seems to have regrouped the Wildcats. I know they got a really good, like Illinois does, true freshman and Justin Jackson at running back, and he's really picked up the load offensive-wise, and defensively they're able to take advantage of some inconsistencies that Wisconsin has had in the passing game. Melvin Gordon obviously had a career day, but turnovers really hurt the Badgers in Evanston.
Yeah, the one over the Red, that was a big game because now they have a one-game lead in the standings over Wisconsin, which is basically a two-game lead because they own the tiebreaker. It makes this Northwestern story an interesting one, and it also makes Northwestern's game against Nebraska, which is in Evanston, if I'm correct, in 2 weeks, really an interesting ball game. You think Northwestern, if they pull off one more upset, this is one of those really big surprises in the Big Ten?
Yeah, maybe, but I'm not sure they're going to win today. They play Minnesota. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on, I'm sure. But yeah, they're a surprise, especially the way they started. I guess they had one of those closed-door team meetings, players-only meetings that you hear about, and they've played pretty well since.
Yeah, even if they do, run the table in the West, I still don't think they're the team to beat in the Big Ten. I think that's Michigan State up in East Lansing, and good for Northwestern to kind of get back on the winning track. And I'm sure Pat Fitzgerald's happy with the results they've had so far in Big Ten play. But like Steve said, Minnesota poses a tough test today.
It kind of feels like this might be one of the years in the Big Ten where the team to beat isn't the best team or the team that wins. Enough fluky games like that could happen. The other teams we got to talk about, Minnesota and Iowa, a couple of 1-0 teams, both of them off last week. Minnesota plays Northwestern today. These teams see an opportunity now that Wisconsin has a loss?
I think so, but they both shown us they could be up and down too. Iowa's looked bad a couple of times, and same with Minnesota, went on the road and got pounded. So yeah, maybe everybody's just mediocre.
I think you kind of hit it spot on, Steve. There's no dominant team in the Big Ten West, and Wisconsin, you look at them in the preseason, Nebraska as well, but they both got about one conference loss. Obviously, Nebraska lost to a great Michigan State team last Saturday night, and I don't know, the West is just kind of up in the air right now, and I think, a lot of things will get sorted out here in the next few weeks.
You mentioned everybody being mediocre. I think Illinois fans would take that right about now.
Yeah, they would. Although, if you look at 3-3, I guess that's kind of the definition of mediocre. But it just, going back to what we talked about earlier, it just doesn't feel that way.
It doesn't feel that way. Tim Beckman, like we said, he wants to be positive, and I hope he is as positive with his team as the front is that he puts in front of the media, because it's got to be tough for them. The coaches after the game talked about they can't lose the locker room, or else it doesn't matter that they're 3-3 and really still have a shot to pull off a couple upsets. And who knows? If that's the state of things right now, but who knows? Well, after all the movement around football, the Big Ten East, even early, looks fairly normal. Ohio State after a bye and Michigan State after the win over Nebraska are on the top of the division, and Michigan down yet again. We'll touch on all of it next. It's time for the Inside the Illini Play of the Week, brought to you by the Decatur Athletic Club. Let's pick a pair from the game. Now, I've been guilty of criticizing a vanilla offense at times, but coordinator Bill Cubit pulled out all the stops, including a Statue of Liberty that set up a short Illinois touchdown, and down 3 on a first down, it was Illinois' second try at a flea flicker. This one worked, a 47-yard completion to Mikey Dudek, a tie for our Play of the Week. All's well in East Lansing. The skid continues in Ann Arbor, and way out there in Piscataway, New Jersey, there's a team that refuses to play down to expectations. We go back to Eric Harold for a Week 6 recap of the East.
In the East, number 10 Michigan State taking on number 19 Nebraska out of the West early. Big play from Tony Lippett as he takes the ball on the reverse, gets around the corner. He's got a blocker in front of him down the sideline and in for the score. Michigan State up early. Later, it's 27-22 as Nebraska tried to come back, but that comeback bid failed with this interception. Michigan State wins 27-22. Number 20, Ohio State taking on Maryland. JT Barrett drops back, looks to the right side, floats it over defenders to Marshall, puts him up 14-0. Later, they would get some plays from their defense as Maryland backed up in their own territory. It's picked off by Darren Lee, takes it down to the 1-yard line. That would lead to points at the end of the half. Ohio State wins 52-24. Brady Hoke on the hot seat with his team taking on Rutgers. They got the lead early as Devin Gardner runs around the right side, takes it in, 10-6 Michigan. But Rutgers would answer as Gary Nova drops back, looks down the middle of the field, long ball to Andrew Terzilli. Terzilli takes it 80 yards in for the score, puts Rutgers up. Later, you would see more from Gary Nova as he looks to the end zone. He's almost taken down, but he gets it off. Touchdown Rutgers. But this was a back-and-forth game, and Michigan had a chance to go for the win late with this field goal attempt. Down by 2, and the field goal was blocked. Michigan loses again 26-24 to Rutgers. Indiana in a non-conference matchup with North Texas. Nate Sudfeld airs it out deep to Shane Wynn. Easy touchdown there, 76 yards. Indiana, no problems with North Texas. They win 49-24. And now we return to the Inside the Illini crew.
Well, it's worth noting in the Big Ten, they lost their last undefeated team in that Nebraska-Michigan State game. So that's going to make the conversation for the Final Four pretty interesting. I think the Oregon loss may have hurt and helped Michigan State somehow. I don't know how that works, but how'd you like Michigan State's performance in that game? They kind of let the Huskers creep back into it. Was that more concerning for you?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised because I quite honestly turned it off when Michigan State was way out in front. Then I flipped back and saw that Nebraska had narrowed the gap some. I don't think the game was ever in doubt. The outcome was ever in doubt. But yeah, that surprised me a little bit. And Michigan State, I think, is in pretty good shape. I kind of think that Ohio State's in better shape. I think Ohio State, if they run the table, would have a chance to maybe get into that playoff.
Yeah, I think what Connor Cook's done at quarterback so far has been pretty impressive, but not as impressive as what Tony Lippett, their wide receiver for Michigan State's done. He's a big play threat for the Spartans, something that necessarily wasn't there last year offensively for them. They relied so much on Jeremy Langford and their stout defense. But yeah, Ohio State's making progress as well. JT Barrett looks more comfortable each week, and Ezekiel Elliott has kind of emerged in the run game to give Barrett a nice compliment as well. So it seems Urban Meyer has helped the Buckeyes rebound from that tough loss to Virginia Tech. Yeah, we talked a little bit more about Ohio State. You mentioned the growth of Barrett over the, I guess, first 6 weeks of the season here. Is Ohio State, back in our good graces in terms of a contender? Because they sure didn't feel that way the first few weeks of the season.
I think they're getting there.
Yeah.
I really do. Again, if they run the table now, if that would for them to do that, they'd have to win at Michigan State. So that could be a tough assignment for sure. But yeah, I think they're getting the respect back, and it all surrounds JT Barrett because he's playing pretty well.
Yeah, I think so too. And their defense has shown some shaky signs in the secondary. Try to say that 3 times fast, and we'll see how well you do. But it's a concern, I think, for the Buckeyes if you face a good passing team, and Michigan State's been able to exploit some teams with their long passing game.
Rutgers and Maryland still hanging around there. Talking about the Rutgers game, we all picked Rutgers to beat Michigan, mind you.
Sounds weird.
It sounds strange. We picked them to meet Michigan, and they did. But is there still a level of surprise that Michigan hasn't been able to right the ship here halfway through the season?
I think there's a level of surprise on both those teams.
Right.
Rutgers being 5-1, Michigan being 2-4, and really looking bad. I don't know if Michigan gets any better this year.
I don't think they go to a bowl game at all this year. I think they're home for the postseason. I think you're going to see a coaching change in Ann Arbor, and Brady's Hoke's days are numbered, to say the least.
Their schedule doesn't get any easier down the stretch, that's for sure. Up next, our player spotlight, and one of just a number of guys on the team you root for, you feel bad for after these losses. Mason Monheim, as consistent of a defensive player as the Big Ten's had since 2012. We'll explain and we'll talk about his growth this season and what he means to a team hoping to avoid a season-long swoon. Next. Welcome back. It's been a tough run for the Illinois defense. In fact, little over the last 30 games has convinced us that things are going to get better. But right in the middle of that defense is one of the Big Ten's most consistent linebackers the last 3 seasons. Noah Newman chats with Mason Monheim in this week's Player Spotlight, brought to you by Sarah Bush Lincoln Health System.
It's been a struggle for the defense in 2014. The Illini are giving up 35 points per game. That's 7 more than Indiana. And they've allowed nearly 1,500 yards rushing, which is dead last in the Big Ten. As the losses pile up, no one seems to be taking it harder than Mason Monheim.
That's what we work for. We work hard all season, off season, to execute. And when it doesn't happen, it's very frustrating.
The junior from Orrville, Ohio is no doubt one of the team's top leaders on defense. And after a tough loss, he's always there to answer the tough questions.
A coward's way out is to point fingers, and I'm not going to let that happen. We're not going to do that. It's not the team we are. We're a family. We lose together, we win together. So we're only going one way, and that's forward.
Monheim has started all but 2 games since arriving on campus as a freshman. He currently leads the team with 62 tackles, and like he said, he's not pointing fingers. He continues to believe in this coaching staff no matter what.
I truly believe the scheme, our coaching staff, it puts us in positions to win. And like I said the last few days, it's up to us to execute. You know, the play set. There's never been a play designed to not stop something, you know. So it's up to us to go out there and execute.
Things won't get any easier today against Melvin Gordon, who's arguably even better than Amir Abdullah. But don't expect Mason Monheim to quit. That's just not in his DNA.
You can't quit when you're down. If you do that, you're never going to get where you want to be. So, yeah, we won't quit. I'm not going to let the guys quit. I won't quit. Coaches aren't going to quit.
Well, Mason Monheim, a guy, I tried to do some research, and based on my best efforts, his 245 tackles since 2012 are the most among active Big Ten players. I'd say active because Ryan Shazier had 258 in just 2 years with Ohio State. He was pretty good. Monheim, you know, he started as a kid a couple years ago with the buzz cut, who was part of this Monheim and Svatina, these couple of kids that were coming up and playing linebacker. How has he grown over the last couple of years?
Besides his hair, you mean?
Right, exactly. And that beard.
And the beard, yeah.
Matt lobbed that one up for you.
Yeah, he did.
Knocked it out of the park.
I don't know if I did knock it out of the park or not, but he's a good kid. He's a fun guy to talk to, really is, and he's got 60 tackles this year, and that averages out 10 a game, and is among the leaders in the Big Ten. He's a guy that's been consistent, as you mentioned, and still trying to get better as we move along.
Yeah, they moved him to weak side linebacker during spring ball, obviously, and they put TJ Neal kind of at that middle linebacker spot that Monheim has held the last 2 seasons. He still needs to improve a little bit on his pass coverage, but he always seems to be kind of around the ball, and he's been a good spokesperson for the team. He's, he's like he told me earlier this week, he's had some highs, but a lot of lows at Illinois, and he's just trying to, keep the mindset positive as much as he can on the defense that has, seen better days.
He's a guy who we appreciate always steps in front of the camera, in front of the microphone, and gives us answers to our questions. But I can tell you there's not a guy who seems more upset about these losses, especially these mounting losses, than Mason Monheim. Is he the emotional center of that defense, if there is such a thing?
If there is such a thing, I would say he'd qualify for that, would you?
I'd say that, and Ernest Thomas, too. Those are kind of 2 guys on the defense that really a lot of the younger guys look up to, and for their expertise and their advice on how to get through some of the struggles. And Monheim grew up kind of in Northeast Ohio, was an Ohio State fan, so he's seen what the pinnacle of Big Ten football looks like, and I know he desperately wants to get Illinois just even in the conversation among kind of the mid-level Big Ten teams.
And I think that's important because if he is the emotional leader, then it's on him to kind of lead this turnaround, to help this team figure out what they need to do on really what's been a bad defense for a long time. But like you said, as one of the kids you root for, we sure hope he can help turn this thing around. Eastern Illinois, meantime, well, they should be rested, but now they begin a stretch of 7 Ohio Valley Conference games. 3 of those are against ranked teams. How they're feeling off the bye, and a report from EIU next. Five of 12 opponents on Eastern Illinois' football schedule are ranked in the FCS. 2 of them are currently 500 or better in the FBS. They won't make schedule excuses because for a couple of years, EIU was the ranked team beating FBS teams. As they try to get back on track, we go inside the Panthers with Eastern Illinois University.
The road to a 3rd OVC championship in a row resumes today for Eastern Illinois as the Panthers come off their bye with 6 games remaining on the 2014 schedule. All 6 are OVC contests. Offensively, EIU is led by junior quarterback Jalen Whitlow. The Kentucky transfer leads the Panthers in rushing with 395 yards on 66 carries. The Panthers have been without preseason All-OVC running back Shepard Little the past 2 games due to injury and hope for his return today against EKU.
Shep's had a good week. We're hoping that, we got him a little bit, but rested him and just got him healthy, and really feel like that he's really close to being back to 100%. We really feel like that Saturday he's got a chance to be at close to full speed.
Senior Adam Drake of Charleston leads the Panther receiving corps with 36 catches and 514 yards. EIU will look to find the end zone more often today. In each of their last 2 losses, the Panthers settled for 2 field goals instead of touchdowns.
We've got to continue to make yards, and we need to turn those yards into points. But the thing that we've done over the last couple of weeks is we've gotten better in the turnover battle. We've got to continue to harp on, not having foolish penalties.
On defense for EIU, senior linebackers Robert Haynes and Adam Gristick led the way in tackles and tackles for loss. Junior cornerback Anthony Standifer leads the way in the secondary with 2 interceptions and 4 pass breakups. EIU will be at OVC Power Eastern Kentucky later today. The Colonels are off to their best start since 1990 with a 5-0 record. 2 of EKU's 5 wins have come in OVC play. In their 2 OVC wins, they outscored the opposition 80-24.
It's just a natural rivalry because of the success of the 2 programs over the years. Playing Eastern Kentucky, the one thing you know about it is it's going to be a physical game, and you're going to get a great effort out of their football team. We're playing our 3rd nationally ranked FCS team so far this year. We just got to focus on us, and we got to focus on doing the things that we know we need to do. But we've got to. Our kids are excited about this opportunity to go down and beat a good Eastern Kentucky team.
EKU has won 7 of the last 11 in the series, but the Panthers have won each of the past 2 seasons. Kickoff is set for 5 p.m. today in Richmond, Kentucky. The game can be seen online at the OVC Digital Network. Reporting on the Eastern Illinois Panthers for Inside the Illini, I'm Brad Kupiec of WEIU.
Thanks as always to Eastern for that report. Hopefully EIU enjoys the week off. Next up, we check in with the guys who play on Sundays and a brand new Illini and the Pros report. But first, we'll make our college football picks. That's straight ahead on Inside the Illini, Big Ten football. Welcome back. Time now for our weekly pick'em. Each week we'll pick our favorite games across college football and give you some winners. And 16 picks into the season. Let's take a look at the standings. 11-5 and 10-6 are Matt and I. A couple of playoff teams. Matt, maybe a fringe playoff team in the NFL. Steve, you're not doing so well this season.
I'm going to fire myself.
Yes, there you go. Coaches don't survive 6 and 10 seasons. At least not in Chicago. Lovie Smith learned that. He was even better than that. Anyway, besides the point, we have some picks. Great matchups across college football for the 2nd straight week. An intriguing one as we pick one of the Big Ten games, Northwestern at Minnesota.
Northwestern kind of the flavor of the week, so to speak, in the Big Ten, but I'm going with Minnesota playing at home against the Wildcats.
I really like what David Cobb's done for the Golden Gophers. I'm going to go with Minnesota as well.
You know, I think Northwestern will be riding high, and maybe this is wishful thinking, but I think a Northwestern-Nebraska matchup in Week 8 would be really interesting if Northwestern went in that 3-0 in the conference. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Wildcats in this one. I think Northwestern's definitely got a shot. Second game, we're picking a ranked matchup between Oregon and UCLA, 2 teams coming off of tough losses, both of them at home. Now Oregon's at UCLA. Steve?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking Oregon in this. They're a little bit higher rated, but they've struggled in that loss and one of their wins as well. I'm going to go with the Bruins playing at home.
I'm not falling off the Marcus Mariota bandwagon yet. I've got the Ducks winning this one.
I have nothing against Mariota, but I think back to that Oregon game. I think of a 3rd and 20 that they had to stop and couldn't late in that ball game. The defense really concerned me. I think Oregon played poorly. I don't think UCLA necessarily played poorly. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Bruins, especially there at the Rose Bowl. Now, one of the better matchups we'll see this season in terms of rankings, number 2 Auburn, number 3 Mississippi State. Those are the 2 SEC teams at the top of the heap right now.
How about the state of Mississippi?
Yeah, no kidding.
They're on fire down there. I'm going to go with Auburn, though. I think they'll go in and pull the upset in a close game.
Bring out the cowbells. I'm going with my home
state
where I was born. Mississippi State takes this one.
I was born in Washington, and none of the teams up there are doing well. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Auburn. I think they're a team that's been there at least last year. They were there. They won in some of those big magical moments. Mississippi State, the beneficiary of course, a big win, but of course some of those top teams falling off as well, so I'm picking Auburn. That does it for our picks. We'll update the standings next week. We'll see if we can hire another coach for Steve when it comes to his standings. Meantime, Elise Menaker joins us now with a new installment of Illini and the Pros and a busy one. Elise.
In Week 5 of the NFL, some teams losing that should be winning, Bears, and some teams winning that could be losing, And then there are teams that just need to flat out win. The Saints were in what some were calling a must-win game, but for the players, it was time to go back to the days when playing football was all about having fun. Because as former Illini Pierre Thomas describes, it's when you have fun, good things happen. Good things were happening for the running back who had 2 touchdowns. He totaled 112 yards on 12 touches. Him and Kyrie Robinson totaled 209 yards and 3 touchdowns.
It's easy to get distracting and let the fun just slip away, you know, having that energy. A lot of guys had a lot of energy, a lot of poise, and I mean, we just played the game like we knew how, and we got this W we won.
Also in that game for the Buccaneers, Akeem Spence with 2 tackles. Before Sunday's game between the Ravens and the Colts, the Baltimore Sun commenting on how Vontae Davis, he's been on a roll lately. Numbers don't lie. Davis hasn't allowed a touchdown since the 14th week of last season. He has 1 interception this season and 5 pass deflections. So could he keep it up against Ravens wide receivers? He sure could. The cornerback had a combined 4 tackles, deflected 2 passes.
It's picked off by Vontae Davis.
And had 1 interception for 29 yards as the Colts win their 3rd straight, 2013. In San Francisco, Alex Smith looking to get revenge against his former team, and so is Chiefs receiver A.J. Jenkins. Jenkins was a first-round pick by the 49ers in 2012. He was traded to the Chiefs before last season. Jenkins telling the Kansas City Star he wanted to get this day over with. Well, he did, and he tallied 1 catch for 3 yards. He also rushed once for a loss of 2 yards. He was targeted twice. 49ers wide receiver Brandon Lloyd put on quite a show. He had 3 catches, and the 33-year-old not showing his age here, getting some airtime on this 29-yard grab. In this game, Lloyd led all receivers in yardage with 76.
I don't know why more teams were not out looking to get this guy this year. 49ers lucky to have him. Loses the ball.
The Patriots hushed any doubters over the weekend with a 43-17 win over the Bengals. Michael Buchanan got himself on the stat sheet for the first time this season. He recorded 2 tackles. The Jets trying to avoid a 4-game losing streak, but they were shut out by the Chargers 31-0. Jeff Cumberland had a pair of catches for 12 yards. One of the best plays in Week 5 came from Tony Romo in the Dallas-Houston game. Romo somehow avoiding a sack from J.J. Watt, but we're talking about Texans linebacker Whitney Merciless, who tied a season-best 5 tackles. Texans lose, though, 2017. That's your Illini in the pros. I'm Elise Menaker.
Thank you, Elise. Time now to get everybody ready for today's matchup. We mentioned how Illinois kind of made Purdue look like Wisconsin in the run game. Guess who's lining up on the other side of the ball just minutes from now? We discuss Illinois' chances against the Badger attack and what the Illini can do to compete next. Is it Riley O'Toole, Aaron Bailey, or is it both of them? That's not a question the Illinois coaching staff had hoped they'd have to answer in Week 7, but the injury to Wes Lunt has Illinois focusing on problems that don't pertain to the glaring mismatch between Illinois and Wisconsin. Another hostile environment and another Heisman-caliber running back await in Madison.
Welcome the Illini and their fans to the tradition.
It's a tough place and a tough time to be weighing your quarterback options. The senior, Riley O'Toole, will be prepared for a start like he did against Nebraska.
Had a fairly decent game until you take away a couple plays.
But they're also preparing for the possibility of burning Aaron Bailey's red shirt, which was never part of the plan.
That's not going to be able to occur now because he's got to help us win football games.
Bailey hasn't played a game with a passing attempt since, coincidentally, he completed a touchdown pass against Wisconsin a year ago. The lingering concern with O'Toole is the turnovers. He's thrown 4 interceptions in about 4.5 quarters, though one of those was a desperation shot to the end zone against Purdue.
A couple of them are down there in the scoring zone, and we got to convert that.
But the quarterback situation isn't any clearer in Madison, a job that once belonged to Joel Stavey. Head coach Gary Anderson handed over the reins to Tanner McAvoy at the beginning of the year.
Pressure up the middle. McAvoy throws it up. Intercepted.
Now that McAvoy has struggled, Stavey is back in the mix, attempting 19 passes last week in his first action of 2014. Anderson says both will play against the Illini.
I'm a firm believer right now that our offense, with where we are as an offense as a whole, not as the quarterback position, we're best served to be able to play both of those quarterbacks to help our offense move down the field.
But all this talk about passing the ball when the running game is going to dictate everything else that happens. Melvin Gordon is 7 yards shy of the NCAA rushing lead, trailing Nebraska's Amir Abdullah, who became the nation's rushing leader after facing Illinois.
He has the ability to run through arm tackles like, no other back. So, you talk about tackling, we really don't need all 11 hats getting to the ball, wrapping this guy up.
It's a matchup of the nation's third best rushing offense against the 119th ranked rushing defense. That's what you call a mismatch. 119th ranked out of 125 on the NCAA website, but that's second to worst of the Power 5 schools. I think it's Texas Tech is the only one who gives up more yards per game on the ground. The mismatch is pretty severe in this one. We did talk about. You think Melvin Gordon's a little bit bigger, a little harder to take down than Amir Abdullah was?
I do, and he is averaging 174 yards a game.
It's okay.
Illinois is giving up 250 a game, but Wisconsin is not just Gordon. They're averaging 330 yards a game rushing the football. So yeah, the mismatch is certainly there. How it plays out, we'll see, but it doesn't look good going in.
Yeah, they got Tanner McAvoy, the quarterback. He's a capable run threat as well, and Corey Clement is Gordon's backup. He's not used as much last year as James White was, with Gordon and White really kind of sharing the duties. But the thing with Wisconsin's offense is they're going to have to throw the ball at some point today. I don't know how much they're going to throw, but they don't have that standout wide receiver like they did last year with Jared Abadaris, and their tight end game is okay, but it's not great. So Illinois is going to have to take advantage of it when Wisconsin puts the ball in the air to try to force some turnovers, try to get some stops, because the run game is so overpowering for Wisconsin.
The supplement to that is what's going to happen in the passing game. We talked about how they might use both of those quarterbacks. So here, Joel Stavi's name at the beginning of the year, and here he's not going to be the starter. I'm a little surprised, but that's because watching Illinois play them the last couple of years, Stavi has done really well. His completion percentage is well over 60%. 174 rating, which for some perspective, the best Illinois has ever had over the course of a season is 140. So a 174 rating against Illinois, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Is he a threat? Does he see something in the Illinois defense he likes, or is he maybe just a little too rusty at this point?
I don't. They're only getting 150 yards a game in the passing game.
Yeah, it's not a focus of
Right.
theirs. I'm just wondering if it's an ample supplement.
That's a good question, but with the way they run the ball, I don't think they need to worry about the pass.
Well, and Stavi didn't start the year. He had kind of going through a case of the yips, I guess you'd call it. He had, Steve Sax syndrome or Chuck Knobloch. Couldn't throw the ball to his receivers at all, and that's why he hasn't played at all until last Saturday. And I think any quarterback has looked good, though, against Illinois' defense. You take what Austin Appleby did last Saturday against Illinois, a guy who hadn't really played much this year and just picked apart Illinois' defense. So Illinois is certainly susceptible to quarterbacks having their way with him.
Yeah, he only threw for, his first action was last week, threw for about 42% passing. He didn't look particularly sharp. But you're right, it's going to come down to the run game. But the other side of the coin is, if Illinois wants to compete in this thing, they probably got to score 40 points. This is Riley O'Toole's team in Madison today. What do they have to do well? And how does O'Toole have to be used to maybe limit some of those mistakes he seems to make when he gets in there?
Well, if they score 40 points, I like their chances.
Yeah, I think that's okay.
I just don't know that's going to happen. But the mistakes with O'Toole is the big thing. He was intercepted 3 times out in Lincoln. So, yeah, they're going to have to. But the problem with even thinking about scoring 40 points is that Wisconsin gives up about 17 a game. So they're pretty good defensively.
I just got a feeling this game's going to be a lot closer than people think, and maybe in a few hours I'm completely wrong and you think I'm nuts and don't want to listen to any of my talk about Illinois football the rest of the year. But I think Bill Cubit's going to have to adjust his play calling a little bit. I think you're going to see Josh Ferguson heavily involved, and I think Mikey Dudek's going to get involved again, maybe not so much with the deep passing game this week, but just on those short throws in the flat and just have him go to work. And I think Illinois is going to be in this in the fourth quarter.
Let's assume you're not crazy. I want to ask you why you think it's going to be as close as
I just think it is because Illinois is going to play the whole us against the world mentality this week. They've been hearing all the talk all week about, the uncertainty of Tim Beckman's status. The season's not going the way they want. They're not going to go to a bowl game. They're going on the road in a hostile environment. They're 25-point underdogs. I mean, all the cards are in place for Illinois to just say, this is what's going to happen. We're going to make it close. We're going to keep it competitive. We're going to show teams we're not a fluke. And I think just with the closeness the team has this year with each other, I think that's going to come into play today.
About 30 seconds left. Illinois is 1-17 under Tim Beckman. What can he do the rest of the season if he's going to save his job?
Win a couple games. How about that?
A couple or 3?
Well, 3.
Yeah.
I'd say 3.
I'd say 2 or 3 at least. You just have to win some games. I mean, that's the profession Beckman's in, and in the society we live in today, they want wins now, and he has to deliver upon those.
Well, that does it for us here on Inside the Illini Big Ten Football. Maybe we'll get a big one today. Illinois Big plays next week. They have a bye week next week. I'm trying to get my bearings here. That means we're also going to take our first break of the season. We clearly need it. But we'll be back, same place 2 weeks from today, as Illinois prepares for homecoming against Minnesota. Have a good night.
Thank you for watching Inside the Illini, Big Ten College Football. Brought to you by Illini HQ, the News Gazette, News Talk 1400 WDWS, and WAND.